Okay, so today's one will be quite foundation, and if you've seen some of these before, that's fine. Don't worry, we will get onto the better stuff later down the line. Um, so today we're just gonna talk about 3x structure point of view, and then we'll go into some like writing tools that I use and I'll recommend for this course. We'll get to that. All right. So the one of the first thing you guys will probably have learned in school is the 3x structure. There's just three parts in the story: setup, confrontation, resolution. So this is kind of like a basic thing where you see like, okay, there's a setup, right? Setup is where you introduce the scene, the world building, the characters, right? And then you throw in the inciting incident. That's where something happens that throws them into like their quest, their journey, their mission, right? And that's where confrontation. So rising stakes as it gets higher and higher, it builds up to a climax, and then you have a resolution. Okay, so let's try the. So have you guys heard of this 3x structure before? Who here has heard of it? Who here has never heard of it? Oh wait, the basic situation. 3x because there's act 1 which is setup, act 2 is confrontation, and act 3 is resolution. English session fact, cute lah. Okay. So let's try to understand. Okay. Why do we do an introduction? Okay, question come, let's try to brainstorm. Why do we do an introduction? To get the readers hooked, okay? Any other ideas? Tell the reader on the premise, that's true. People need to care about your characters, that's true. So all these, like, correct. World building, correct. Context on the story, also correct. Introducing readers to the world, yeah. Describe and outline. Yeah, I think you guys generally have the idea. I think the key idea is you want to pull the readers in and you want to give them the setup. Why you want to give them the setup is because if I come into the story and I don't care about the characters, okay, the characters can be in the worst situation in the world and I wouldn't care. I would just be like, okay, if you die, it doesn't matter to me. There is no stake. If you want the reader to follow through on your story, right, they need to be invested as well, right? They need to invest in the characters, right? They need to invest in the scene. They need to invest in the world building. In fact, some people will just read for the world building. It's like, the plot is kind of crappy, but like I love the world building, and then they'll just read through the book. Ideally, everything should be good, but we see what we can do, right? Okay, why do we need an inciting incident? Otherwise, there's no conflict. There's motivation for the characters. You gotta move the story forward. Otherwise, nothing happens. Okay, to repeat the question, why do we need the inciting incident? Yeah, you guys are getting it. So, the inciting incident generally is a turning point in the story. Inciting incident, I'm going to point it out here. Yeah. So, here's an example of an incident that. Okay, let me think of an example first before I say. um, let's say my inciting incident in the story is, okay, the setup is the weather is hot, and then we turned on the air condition, right? And then later I turn off the air condition and it's hot. It's still hot, right? Is that a good inciting incident? The fact that it's now hot again is not. Okay, why is it not? Because it doesn't change anything. Is it? There is a point where you can you can step back. There is a point of return, is it? The inciting incident ideally should be a point of no return. The inciting incident when the aircon isn't working when you try to turn it on, yes. And then now you have to solve it. It has to be the point of no return. Something must change so that I can't come back. Because if I could go back to how it was before, right, then there isn't anything to solve, right? So we write, the stakes get higher, right? So we keep the reader through. As they start to get comfortable, you jack up the stakes. You make it even more stressful. You push them through and through and through, right? Then you get to the climax. Okay, why do we need a climax? To resolve the issue the incident made, to get a conclusion, moment of truth, to emphasize the end of a story or scenario. Yes. Okay. So you build the stakes, right? Because you want to get the reader through. You can't just like, okay, yeah, nothing happens, nothing changes. Things need to change, right? And you need to slowly get closer to like the eventual end, right? Climax is when all of that should ideally get resolved, right? Maybe not everything. Maybe if you want to write a sequel, right, you can move that on. But you want to at least wrap up a lot of the story and then leave behind like one trail or two and say, oh, I guess you gotta pay money for the next book. Sure. But in general, like you want to resolve most of the stuff. Okay. And then you have the falling action. So falling action is when you want to you resolve most of the stuff, right? Okay. Then like yeah, it wraps it up, right? I found the setup of a climax weird here though. Is resolution necessary for a story? Not always. Not always. And keep in mind that this is a very simple, watered down like structure. Um there are a lot of other structures that you can use and people have done. Like okay, example, right? Example, have you guys watched Memento? No, damn it. Okay, great movie. Memento is a movie. Memento. It's by Christopher Nolan. It's not a love story. Memento, correct. Uh, it starts from the end of the movie, and then it works its way backwards. That you don't you already the amazing thing about Memento is that you start from the ending. You know how what the characters are gonna do. You know how everything ends. But then you start to watch back and back and back and holy crap, it is amazing. Okay. And you know, like okay, example, right? Another one is if you guys played the game To the Moon. To the Moon is a story where you go backwards through a man's memories. You start at the end. And it's amazing, okay? So, example, right? I'm not gonna spoil anything, right? Example, you know, hypothetically in the story, if I show you two characters breaking up in the most messy way possible and everyone is in tears, right? Okay. Now, true. Then you continue reading, and then now you jump further back in time, and now you see the characters who were in like maybe 10 years before the breakup, and then you see them getting together, and they're like, "This will last forever. I will love you, like for eternity and a day." Right? We will buy the house, and we will furnish it this way, and then they start planning the decoration. and they say, I want a center fountain. And now, like, then you're just like, oh my goodness, the fountain? You mean the one where she's gonna bring a hammer and smash to pieces? Oh no, everything. Oh, you see, this is how you can tell a story. The story can be amazing telling it backwards, right? But they follow a different structure. Right. This is how the Star Wars prequel work. We know that Anakin becomes Darth Vader so we can see the machinations of the Emperor. Exactly. There are a lot of very interesting storytelling techniques. Okay? But I unfortunately won't be able to go through everything in the first lesson. So we will keep it simple. This will be a 3x structure. But again, like someone mentioned also, like the quote about learning the rules to break them. Perfectly fair, right? Yes. But this is a good starting point, especially remember that, this is gonna be beginner friendly. Course fountain. Foreshadowing. Read the ending of short stories first. Fair enough, fair enough. Okay. So moving forward, let's take one example. Iron Man. Have you guys watched Iron Man? Because frankly, I did not. But I had to pick something you guys would know. Oh no. Okay, don't worry. If you haven't, it's fine. Don't worry. You're not missing out, alright? Okay. For those who do know, okay, introduction. Okay, what's the introduction to Iron Man? Okay, for those who know, come, what is it? Toy Story. I guess Toy Story works. Okay, Doctor's a piece of work. Okay, so the first part, they introduce the characters, they introduce the scene, right? Something, weapons dealer, Tony Stark is rich. Yes. So Tony Stark, defense contractor of the Stark Industries, right? And then there's like law with like who he works with, who he like, like weapon dealer and something father, something. Okay, what's the inciting incident? What gets him to the point of no, like gets him past the point of no return? His heart gets damaged. Terrorists capture him. Someone shot a missile. Ah, yes. So he's captured by a terrorist group, the Ten Rings, and he's forced to build a suit of armor to escape. Right. From that point on, right, he starts to realize something. He realizes that, the weapons that his company has been producing over the years is going to the terrorist group, which is how they kidnapped him in the first place. Right? And he starts to question the morality of everything, right? But then Stain, Stark's father's old partner, works with the Ten Rings to take over as CEO, right? See, so stuff starts to build up, right? In fact, there's a lot of tension. There's more than just this, but we're gonna focus on like the main parts, right? And then it climaxes with them fighting, and then Stark wins, right? There's kind of two climaxes in the movie. Him escaping is the first one. Yes. Okay. So to kind of explain the part, there are subplots, right? You could follow that model, but you could also have like maybe let's say the plot is Cinderella and the goal is for Cinderella to get with the prince, right? But you could have a subplot, right? Maybe her goal isn't to get with the prince first. Her goal is to just meet the prince one time and get away before midnight strikes, right? Because that's when everything goes away. And so now you have tension building up. You're building up towards the climax. You're like, it's coming to 12. It's coming to 12. Cinderella, pay attention to the clock. It's coming to 12, right? And then like kiss him, right? And then you're almost gonna kiss, and then the clock strikes 12, and then she's like, oh no, it's 12. She runs away. She leaves her glass slipper behind, right? And so her escaping, that's like the climax and the resolution of the first conflict, right? But that's not the ending, right? Because we kind of resolve some things, but she still doesn't get with the prince, right? Her sisters are still being difficult on her, right? And so we haven't resolved everything yet. We resolve that scene, right? We can build up to one scene and then let it ease off, but that doesn't have to be everything. Act 2 is the hardest thing to create. You're fine with Act 1 and 3, but once you 2, how long everything should go? Yes, it's the constant problem, right? But again, you can break it out into subplots and let people, if you feel like it's getting too slow, just throw in another subplot. Just gives the reader something to deal with, right? Okay, another one, Frozen, Let It Go. Okay, who here has watched it before? And who here hasn't watched it before? I'm gonna freeze you. You watched it before, forgot the plot. Okay. No worries. Okay, but most of you have. Okay, very good. Okay, what's the introduction? Reindeer? Okay, I don't think the reindeer was at the introduction. Okay, so Elsa has powers over ice, right? And then she has to hide it, right? And meanwhile, there's the other sister, Anna, who, yes, she gets hurt, right? But then, but then also the setup was both their parents die in a tragic, like voyage, and then like something a storm through like capsizes the ship and they never make it back, right? And so it's just two two sisters, two orphans who have to go through the world. See, so just like that, right? Their relationship is strained. See, so they create a bunch of setup, right? Now you are invested in the characters because you're just like, oh man, poor sisters, they don't have parents, and they don't even have each other, right? That's why when Anna says, "Do you want to build a snowman?" Elsa is just like not gonna be there, and you're just like, ugh, I feel this. Like you feel the isolation, right? More world building, yes, but they do establish the characters too, because you do get a feel of their different personalities, right? Anna is bubbly, Elsa is reserved, right? Isn't the inciting incident when Elsa struck Anna by accident? There is one that happens when the parents are still there, and then they brought it to the elves in the forest or something, and then basically they heal her, but you got to be careful with your magic, right? So that wasn't really an inciting incident because the problem was immediately solved, right? But it sets the scene for later down the line. The point, okay, come. So since we're on the topic of inciting incident, what is the inciting incident here? Elsa gets upset, turns the fountain to ice. Okay, that's like the starting part, but it's basically, but you're more or less correct, is when she accidentally reveals her powers in front of people, and that's the point of no return. There is no taking it back. Once she showed her powers, people now know that she has magic, right? And then she, put Arendelle into an eternal winter. So we have that inciting incident. Along the way, we have a second subplot, which is Anna has a crush on the prince. Okay, so what happens throughout the story? What is like the rising tension? What's the confrontation? It's a pretty long introduction. Yes and no. I think long introductions are fine if you keep the reader engaged. The last thing you want to do, you know, like especially for fantasy writers, they end up like I have 50 pages of lore, right? And it's not even lore in the story form. It's just here's the country, here's the different states, here's the different kingdoms, here's the dynamics. Each of the kingdoms have a different culture and a different language, right? And then this one has a different religion as well. The other one is more sciencey, another one deals with magic, and another one is elves who live in the forest, and then they communicate this way, these two countries trade, blah 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 blah. And they're just like, how do I put that in the story? And then they take all of that and they squeeze it into the prologue or the introduction, and Russ like, no. See, like don't do that, right? But we'll get into it like later down the line. Don't worry, I'll talk about it. Okay, so they need to, okay, something about snowman, blondie guy. Yeah. So, correct, like Elsa runs away to live on her own. Anna tries to convince her to come back but fails, right? And along the way she meets like the the guy and the reindeer and the whatnot. Okay, what's the climax? Like where's the point that everything resolves? Anna stops the prince from cutting down Elsa. Yeah. So basically, yeah, you guys are right. The prince tries to take over the kingdom by letting Elsa's curse kill Anna and sentencing Elsa to death. Then something, yeah, love cures the curse and then everything resolves, right? And then everything is wrapped nicely in bow ties and they live happily ever after. Um when does plot twist live? I guess it happens right before the climax. Yeah. But plot twists can also happen after the resolution. You know, like those horror movies where we like, oh yeah, everything is fine. We have defeated the evil. You know, this won't come back and haunt us, right? Most definitely not. And then like it zooms in on like the closet, and then in the darkness, the two eyes appear again. Ah, it's still here. So that could be a plot twist, and that can happen after the resolution, right? But for the usually in the purpose of like a kids show, you wanna have like the plot twist happen and everything. By the time we go to the resolution, everything gets wrapped up in like nice little bow ties. Okay, moving on. One more movie, Zootopia. Who here has watched it before? Haven't watched it. Oh no, you have, you have. Who hasn't? Jax hasn't. Ah, that's fine. Try everything. You're trying to murder us. Terrible. 30 times in 3 years. Wow. That's cute. Okay. Okay, come, what's the introduction? I'm sorry for all the people who are getting spoiled on movies that you want to watch, but I've given you a bunch of years, so you guys had time. Okay, Judy aspires to be the cop. Yes. So Judy moves to Zootopia to work as a cop, but she faces discrimination for being a rabbit, right? And then she makes the crew Nick Wow, right? So they do have like there is some setup and it does take a while to get to the inciting incident, right? But they do get you an idea of the characters. They do get you invested in their dynamic, right? You have this like uptight Judy, right? And then you have Nick Wall who's just like, rules and suggestions, I'm just gonna do my thing, it's fine. Okay. So when does the inciting incident happen? What's the turning point? This one might be a bit tough because it's actually, I think it's kind of subtle. Okay, I think Paula got it. Judy tries to solve the case of the missing predators in, was it 48 hours? Yeah, correct. Okay, so there are some inciting incidents which you might think is like, because there are a bunch of things that happen, right? There's like oh no, there's like the Nick Wow does bad things and she has to do something, I don't know. Like there are some small subplots here and there, but really like the main thing is when the husband goes missing, right? And the missing predators basically. Um and so they have to do like the course of the movie, throughout the course of the movie, they have to figure out what happened. And so she works with Nick to investigate. They find him, blah blah blah. They thought it's the mayor. So this one's interesting, right? The mayor did something wrong and the mayor went to prison. That was like a fake climax. Like it's a climax of sort. You confront the mayor and whoa, we resolve it. Everything is fine, right? Right. But like that's not the end. They do after a while realize that someone else is behind the plot. It was the secretary all along, right? And so the real climax happens when they finally confront Bellwether and they expose her. And then they live happily ever after. Make sense? There's foreshadowing about this, and they did a good job of being so-called too obvious. I mean, it is a kids' movie. They do try to make it like more. They do try to make it easier for them to handle, because if I like how it does take into account like more subtle aspects. Like it looks at what's basically racism in the furry world, right? Where they're discriminated based on species, right? Like there are a lot of very interesting political slash social undertones, which I think they do, like they wrap it up really nicely in like a nice little furry package, and like kids just watch, interesting, but oh boy, it is quite heavy for what it is. In contrast, Frozen isn't good. Frozen's, oh, the plot twist. I see. I mean, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, but I think, it's nice to look at movies or books and see what they do well, and then you just pick it up. Okay, any questions so far? Nope, still listening. Okay, grew up reading some issues. Okay. Are act two often written in more than one sentences? Yes, you can. Like most definitely. I'm just putting, honestly, like I'm summarizing a lot of these. In fact, let's say we talk about like Zootopia, right? The setup is actually more complex than just this, right? There's undertones of racism or like speciesism, right? There is the whole idea of Judy has hopes and dreams. She doesn't want to be a simple farm girl. She wants to move to the city, right? Where Zootopia, everything is perfect. Turns out it's not, right? She ends up living in a poor apartment building. Her microwave dinner was so sad. She's like wanting to cry to herself until her mom calls her and she lies and says everything is fine, right? She ends up being a parking, like a meter maid, where she just goes around and just like, okay, I'm gonna find you, right? And she doesn't do any so-called real jobs that she dreamt of doing, right? So there's a lot of like broken dreams, right? Nick Wow is another character, right? And over the course of the story, you realize he has a reason for being the way he is, right? And there's a lot of setup, right? All these, I am not touching it at all, because there's no way I'm gonna fit all of that into like a single slide introduction. Okay, they can be as deep as you need it to be. How to determine the right length of the story? I think this one I will kind of go into it during pacing. Like the one of the lessons I'll talk about pacing. But this one honestly, you go by feel. If you consult the industry, okay, they will tell you like, okay, romance novels need to be 40K, fantasy needs to be 100K. I feel personally like, if that's because people in the industry, like people who consume fantasy books, they always expect a certain length, right? People who consume romance expect a certain length. If you are writing for yourself, my recommendation is just write as long as it needs to be. One thing I like with the story is that I don't try to aim for like a word count. I just like to write and have it fill the space that it needs. I don't try to shorten it if it doesn't need to be shortened. I don't try to lengthen it if it needs to be lengthened. If I need to meet okay, what you learned so far, there should be simple setups. It's up to you. Remember, the 3x structure is just one structure. You can pick your own, but this is the basic one that I'm teaching you. Beginner starter pack. Can stories have multiple 3x structures? You can. They're like little rising. We call them subplots, right? So let's say, okay, let's do a bit of digression. All right, let's look at romance movie plot. Oh my goodness, I do not want to click image on this, right? Because it looks bad. Um, movie plot structure. Right? These are the structures. There's the hero's journey, which has a very, like, it's very similar, like call to adventure, supernatural aid, threshold. This is the point of no return, right? There needs to be a helper, there needs to be a mentor, like challenges and temptations, abyss, birth and rebirth, and like something like there's a whole structure, right? People can do like all kinds of turning points. See, first turning point, pinch, midpoint, pinch, second turning point. People will come up with their own structures. In fact, you see, even this is their 3-act structure. It will differ from person to person. It will differ from movie to movie, story to story. Right? This is, again, I'm just gonna introduce a starter pack, right? And then we'll go through. Should the climax resolve the inciting incident? Again, it follows your structure. You can resolve it and throw in another one. But I personally like it when there's like an overarching theme, so that from the, like the problem the character faces at the start gets resolved in the end. So like, the ending of the book or the story kind of wraps up the beginning. Subplots can be 3 acts. Up to you, right? You can in fact have multiple plots just interleaving, right? For instance, you have, in like any movie you watch, right, there could be a romance subplot that starts halfway through where you meet a character and you're just like, oh, there's some romantic tension, right? Along the way, suddenly you realize the best friend has a personal issue that he needs to solve also, right? And you can come up with all sorts of scenarios and choose them to solve, like, in your own way. Blah blah blah. Is research on? Yeah, Raisha. No worries. I will record this. This is recorded. How do you decide subplot? We will get into that, but in piecing, I think. Yeah. But don't worry. Yes. Okay. We can keep more questions. Oh, I realize I still have another part. Okay, let's try to go through this part faster because I think we might drag this lesson on a bit longer than expected. I actually was worried that like there might not be enough content for like the first lesson. I was wrong. I was very wrong. Do you guys mind if this drags on for about half an hour longer? If you guys need to leave, feel free to leave. But again, these lessons will be recorded and I will upload them by hopefully tomorrow. Yeah, I won't cut it short, don't worry. Okay. Let's move on. Point of view, okay. Point of view. Okay, actually no, let's ask you guys. Do you guys know what point of views there are? Who here is familiar with point of view? First person and third person, okay. Yeah, first person, second, and third. Limited, okay. I see you guys have a lot. Okay, so POV is in first person, second person, third person. Okay, you guys, I think some of you guys know, and like they know on a high level, like there's first, second, third, whatever. I'll show you guys the differences, alright? And for those who are not familiar, don't worry, I will talk about it. Okay, so there are 3 main point of views. First, second, and third, and I'll show you guys, okay? But first one actually breaks down into 2 types of first persons, and third person there's 3 kinds. So you didn't know that, okay? You let me show you, okay? The sites are lagging. Okay, wait. Why is it lagging? Okay. Does anyone else booted off Discord? I think it's fine. Is everyone here? Do we still have everyone on board? Okay, you guys are still here. Alright. Okay, we can carry on. Okay, so third person point of view is generally the most common you will see in writing. In fact, I think third person is the one that teachers will generally teach you first. So third person refers to characters by he, him, she, her, they, them. And it's most common point of view because you have a lot of flexibility in exploring the scene. And it generally becomes more objective. So let me show you guys an example. actually before that. So omniscient is no limits on what the narrator can access. And that means it will basically be mind reading. You are the god of this universe and you can access anything. Limited omniscient basically focuses on one character's thoughts and feelings. Okay. Objective is you are like a fly on the wall. You are just observing a scene. Okay. Let me show you guys examples because this will be very confusing. I know it's quite confusing. Okay, so omniscient, basically, here's an example. Okay, Gabriel lifted his lantern, trying to see further into the dark forest. He shouldn't have come here, but it was too late to change his mind. A cloaked man crept up behind him. He reached out his hand and clamped down on Gabriel's shoulder. Gabriel screamed. Okay, so notice a few things. Firstly, we are reading his mind. You see, like we can see what's in his mind. He says he shouldn't have come here, right? And at the same time, we can see the cloaked man creeping up behind him. Okay, so you are now the god of this universe. You can show the reader anything in this world. And this is generally one point of view that most people will use starting out, because I just need to describe the scene. I'll just write it as I imagine it in my head. Yeah. Okay, I see a question. In movies, it's somewhat common to show the bad guys doing bad things that the main character couldn't possibly know. Does it make it big bad evil guy? Okay. Does this make it third person by default? Generally, yes. Movies tend to be third person as well. It's more common. And slightly third person omniscient. I wouldn't say omniscient because you don't get to read their minds. The only time you get to read people's minds in movies is when they have like those internal dialogue or they're writing in the diary, right? Otherwise, you hear those voiceovers. I wonder what he's doing. Like, in the echoey kind of thing. That's omniscient. But in general, it's limited. Like third person, like the fly on the wall, basically. Okay. Second type of third person POV, which is the limited omniscient. I generally like to write it this way. Okay, let's see what. Gabriel lifted his lantern, trying to see further into the dark forest. He shouldn't have come here, but it was too late to change his mind. Suddenly, he felt a cold hand clamped down on his shoulder. He screamed. Okay, so I'm following one character now. I'm following Gabriel, right? Which means that if Gabriel cannot see the man behind him, right, then the reader should not know that there's a man behind him. So the only time that you realize that there's someone behind is when he feels the cold hand on his shoulder. Otherwise, so if Gabriel is surprised in the story, the reader should be surprised as well. This is limited omniscient. This is where it differs. The third one is objective. So I think like you guys brought it up, right? This is similar to what you see in movies. Gabriel lifted his lantern trying to see further into the dark forest. I shouldn't be here, he mumbled. Right? Why? Because we can't read his mind anymore. We're just observing the scenario. So if you want to show that he shouldn't be here, we should make him express the regret. Right? We should see it on his face. Maybe he's turning around to look, should I go back down? Like, you know what I mean? The contemplation of looking back, look in front, look back, then shaking his head. Okay, that's fine. Right? But either way, we have to express it because we can no longer read his mind. A cloaked man crept up behind him. He reached out his hand and clamped down on Gabriel's shoulder. Gabriel screamed. So that's kind of what you expect out of third person objective. Again, you are free to, you can imagine where maybe you do third person objective, right? You don't read his mind, but you only look at Gabriel. So maybe you say he only feels the hand on the shoulder. Basically, you can combine, right? I think this one you're free to explore, but these are the main ones that they'll teach you. Any questions so far? Yeah, that's why there are some stories where the readers don't know what's going on, but their in-universe characters don't. Basically. You got a great yeah, you can send me. I could add it to like the post lessons content if I think it's good and relevant. Okay, let's move on to first person. First person is the next most common one that I see. Basically it refers to like I, me, my, we, us, our. So it's from a specific person's point of view. You generally get limited information. So just like third person, like limited, right? You are giving the person, you are even more limited, right? So you are following one character as they go about their lives, right? If they don't know who's behind them, then the reader should not know who's behind them. Unless they suspect maybe my friend is behind me, then the reader will think, okay, maybe the friend is behind, right? Otherwise, you are locked in. Okay. You generally get a strong and opinionated voice. That means if the person is like he's like a mean person, right? You will be viewing the world through the person's lens. That means you'll be like, ah, this guy terrible, that guy terrible. Oh, I should kick that dog, right? It also allows for unreliable narrator. So basically, if maybe they are like again, if the person's a mean person, he might paint it as I'm doing it for the good of school, right? I'm bullying this guy because how dare he becomes weak, you know, like how dare he thinks being weak is fine, right? Something natural selection, evolution. We need to make sure everyone is strong, and so if I beat up this guy, it's fine, right? Yeah. So it can be very strong and opinionated also. So sometimes this can backfire because people will be like, I don't like the main character. I have started on the book. I don't know if I'll finish it, but the book starts with a very cold-hearted kind of person, and he has a very strong opinion. And people have told me they don't like him, and they'll be like, "Oh, you should have made him more friendly." I'm like, no, he is meant to be like that because throughout the course of the story, he will learn compassion, and he will learn from it's a romance story, so he'll meet someone that he likes, and he'll learn that he needs to be softer, and he will develop through the story. But giving him that voice will accompany the reader through the story. Not an unreliable narrator, it doesn't have to be on purpose. Biases can color someone's perception. Yes, that's true. Yeah, it makes for very interesting storytelling, but it can be very hard to execute, which is why I'm not gonna go into it. Yeah. But basically, by bringing it into first person, you identify with the narrator more. So it makes them very, very relatable because you are literally experiencing the world through their head. So there's two types. Central means the narrator is the protagonist. Peripheral means the narrator is someone who is following the protagonist. I think they do it in some books. Is it Lord of the Rings who does it like that? Like I didn't read the book specifically, but we'll see. Okay. So example, I left my lantern trying to see further into the dark forest. I shouldn't have come here, but it was too late to change my mind. A cold hand clamped down on my shoulder. I screamed. Okay? So this is first person. Now we're looking at I. I did this. Right? So because now I am the person in the scene, I don't know who's behind me, right? Until the cold hand clamped down on my shoulder. Right? But you see, I get full access to the person's thoughts. Yeah. Peripheral is slightly different. So maybe there's someone who's following Gabriel, right? So I can't see far into the darkness of the forest. Gabriel lifts his lantern, allowing us to see just a bit more. We shouldn't have come here, but it was too late to change our minds. Suddenly, a bony hand reaches out beside me and clamps down on his shoulder. He screams, and I scream too. So that's another way. Okay. So lastly, we have second person. Second person is more interesting. Okay. So it generally is it's a unique experience because people don't write this second person POV a lot. And usually it's like you do this, you do that, right? You open the door, right? Like you step in. So it's good because it involves the reader in the story. Now I'm the reader, and if you're writing, say, like fiction where like it's a romance and man, imagine yourself dating this other cute girl/guy, right? And some people would like to self-indulge. They like to imagine that they're a person in the story, right? So sometimes putting it as you helps involve them. But it's very hard to give them a strong opinion, right? So maybe in most cases you like You know, like you want to say, oh, okay, you do this, you do that. You see someone on the street, okay, let's help him, right? If he needs help, right? But it's very hard to say, okay, no, I don't want to help you because I have other things to do, right? And so if you make the character too opinionated, right, and the reader don't agree with the protagonist's choices, they might be uncomfortable with reading you did this, right? But you can do it. Okay, questions. Let's try to catch up. Okay. You like the first person on this snippet the most because of the environment being set up. Yes. So one thing I do for writing is that I try to find a point of view that works the best for the story. I have there have been instances where I started writing something and I didn't feel it, like I wasn't feeling very involved in the scene, right? And then I realized, let's change the point of view. I changed the point of view, and immediately that same scene became so refreshing, right? For instance, if it's a horror scene, right? If you know that the monster is creeping up behind, you're just like, okay, sure, right? But now imagine it's second person. You are walking through the woods and you don't know what is up, but you have heard stories about this particular forest, and there is a strange witch who lives beside a strange graveyard. And the thing is, none of the gravestones have any indication of names. You don't even know if there were people underneath, but it's there. And no one knows who set it up. There has never been a town there before. And you don't know. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. But tonight, on a dare from your friends, you are going on an adventure. Ooh, damn! Second person is kind of like a silent protagonist in a video game. Yes, usually that. You never heard of second person point of view. You can try. Some of my stories are second person. Can you change the point of view over the course of the story? Um, you can try. I don't recommend it because it can throw the reader off. Although some writers, what they do is they'll stick to third person, but the character they are following, in fact, sometimes it's third person, sometimes it's first person. They will keep it to first person, maybe, but they will follow the same character. It's follow different characters throughout the stories. So let's say there are three different heroes, right? Throughout the stories, it might jump between the three different heroes. And it's interesting. Unwind, the Unwind series does that. Neil Straussman or something, I forgot his name. But basically, there are two or three characters at any point in time, and you are following one of them, and then like you might see why the other character doing something weird, and you're just like, why would you do that, right? And then suddenly the next chapter it follows the person who did that weird thing, and then you see his rationale of why he did it, and then you follow through him, follow his journey, and you understand why. So it does do very interesting things because why? If you follow the main character and you know why he does the things he do, it might not be as interesting. And then, but if you see from someone else's point of view, why would you do that? No, right? And then that suddenly there's tension. It makes it more interesting. If the person is lying about the narration, usually you only find out in the. Okay, so the question is, what if the person is lying about his narration? Is there a way to portray it? Yes. So there are some. I think example Black Swan is the movie. It follows someone who has some, was it bipolar or something, and so basically the person that she's enemy against, the person that she's jealous of, and later on escalates into a fight, right? It turns out like she wasn't real. Come to think of it, that's Fight Club as well. Fight Club is an unreliable narrator, right? But you only find out at the end. We happy few games with that, yeah. Blah, 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 blah. What about Joker? That one I'm not super sure. Okay. So moving on. Okay, I'm gonna show you guys the writing tools that you guys can start to use. So you guys might already be familiar with Microsoft Word, right? Unfortunately, Microsoft Word is no longer software that you can just buy. I think, wait, can you still buy it? Right. I think I'm not sure if you can still buy it, but you at some point you can buy and keep it, right? But they recently switched to Microsoft Office 360, 365. And so basically you're paying again and again recurring. Okay, doesn't yeah. LibreOffice is free, so if you really want to edit Google, like not Google, you want to edit Word documents like on your computer, you can use LibreOffice. It's free. The features are not as good, but it's free. I use Google Docs. Okay, I recommend it because it's free and you have quite a fair bunch of features. But people some people don't like it, understandably, because oh, I don't want to give Google like access to my stuff. Like, I think you're fine, but again, it's up to you. You can use LibreOffice if you really don't trust any of that. But for the purpose of this course, I do ask that you use Google Docs, because Google Docs has a very nice sharing feature. That means if you post the link, I can look at the story without having to download a document and opening it up, and then the formatting's all wrong because something different computers, I don't know. Right, Google Docs will make sure that like I don't have that it's easy for us to access what you have written, and it's also easy to leave comments. Yeah, one advantage is that because it syncs across multiple devices, I will actually write on my computer. I can type, and then like, oh crap, I need to go out with my friends, right? And while I'm on the train or while I'm in the taxi, I will take out my phone and continue writing. Another thing is it says edit history. So if I'm editing up to a certain point, I can save a checkpoint and I can revert back to it, and it's free. Google Docs is portable. Doesn't it drain a lot of battery? I never really had a problem with it. I think it's fine. Yeah. Okay. For writing tools, who here has heard of Grammarly? Okay, you use it partially, heard it, you've seen advertisements, never used it before, heard of it, had YouTube advertisements. Ah, don't think anyone has not heard. I like how someone says, I don't think anyone has not heard of it. And then the next person just says, I have never heard of it. You don't like Grammarly. Okay, that's fine. You refuse to use it. Okay, sure. I will demonstrate it to you guys, okay? Okay, but wait, in a bit, alright? Another thing I use is ProWriting 8. This is the one I'm currently using. I'll show you both of them, okay? But I got the lifetime subscription because you can just pay once and never have to pay again. So hopefully they don't go out of business, because then I'll lose all of this. Right. Yeah. But if you don't trust, then you can get the yearly subscription or monthly subscription. Okay. So let's take a look at this. Let me switch over. Where is my window? Yeah, there we go. Okay. Let me change the screen I'm sharing as well on Discord. I'm trying to manage my recording. my Discord viewing and the recording as well. Okay, so this is Grammarly. Okay. Grammarly gives you. Can you guys see my screen? Let's take a look. Yeah, you guys should be able to see it. Okay. Grammarly gives you this bar on the side, right? And then it overlays on your text, so you can look at this, and then they're like, oh. However, instead hiding, right? They're like, oh, please change it to instead of hiding. I think you can click and it will just replace it for you. Okay. Then I say he blended. I think this needs about to refresh. Okay, like see, this is open defiance, right? And so they suggest the change over here, defiance. See, and then you can learn more, and then they'll teach you about it. So it actually, you see, at the far end doesn't have a dash. Please take it out. Yeah. So they do a lot of this for you. Yeah. So it's not blended on, but it should be blended in. I think it didn't catch that. If you pay for premium, there are other stuff that they will suggest. I did use premium for 2 years. But I think they didn't have. You see, they're starting to point out where it's like unclear, wordy, false, and sequence. Yeah, but the reason why I stopped, because at that time, the Google Docs plugin did not use my premium features. if I wanted my premium features, I needed to go into Grammarly and edit it directly. It didn't work directly in Google Docs. But even then, I didn't find it that good, so I didn't use premium. But it looks like it's better now, so it's up to you whether or not you think it's useful. Okay, let's see. Your writer friends won't need you to edit your stories if they just use Grammarly. Oh boy, then that one they should just use Grammarly. Okay, Grammarly suggestions can be in your opinion. That is fair enough, right? I do agree with you that I will ignore half of the suggestions because they're like, oh, it's too passive. I'm like, it's fine because it's fiction, right? Active. I don't need every single sentence to be active, so I will ignore them. But that is okay. Like, it's up to you. Just keep in mind these are tools. These are not replacements for you, right? And so if you don't think they're helpful, skip it. It's fine. Yeah. But Grammarly, considering that it's gonna help you catch your tenses, it's gonna correct your punctuation, it's gonna, like you say that you use the wrong word, then why not, right? I feel like you could get very far because let's say I have people who send me stories for editing, and I'm so distracted by spelling errors, bad punctuation, and like straight out wrong words that like 90% of my corrections are focused on that, right? And instead of looking at the story and telling you how you can improve the plot, the pacing, the character description, I'm looking at the wrong thing. I'm looking at how you can improve, right? Improve your writing by not having spelling mistakes. And if we are at that point, right, then please spend 15 minutes, 20 minutes, look at Grammarly and let it help you. Okay. So let's show you Pro Writing 8. I love Pro Writing 8 because this is like the main thing I use. So this is the same text, right? They catch way more, partially because this is the paid one. Okay, so they'll look for spelling mistakes. They'll look for, oh yeah, screams of terror belong, not belongs. Instead of hiding, they will suggest that also. Instead of hiding. And yeah, but one of the things I like is that they do a report as well. So they will look at, if you look on the right side, you can look, okay, style guide, sentence length. Reduce your average sentence length to improve visibility. And I think they look at here, you see? Like at the far end, blah, 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 they realize that this is a very long sentence, which it is. They are going to tell you that this is too long. Glue index. This is something they look at. Basically, sticky glue, if something is high on glue, that means it's sticky. That means sticky sentences slow your reader down. That means like maybe it's complex. You see, it's these two sentences are so long and difficult to read that they recommend breaking it up. See, because these sentences are sticky. This is Pro Writing 8. So you have that, right? You can look at they have all the suggestion here. They have like whatever. They'll be like, oh, you kind of have a useless comma here. Dressed in a grey sleeveless hoodie and black cargo pants. See, you don't need the comma here. Take that out, right? Yeah. And so this is Pro Writing 8. They do look for a lot of things. You see readability. You have they'll say this is very easy to read. This is difficult to read. Sticky sentences, cliches, no cliches. Diction, is it easy to? Is it for reading? Yeah, I don't know. Pronouns. Yeah, they also look out for pronoun percentage. Like you don't want to see repetitive use of initial pronouns can lead to boring text. Example, he did this, he did that, he did another thing. So they actually measure a lot of this. Is that alliteration? Okay, we don't have. Yeah, but they do very heavy analysis. The free version basically gives you the free version gives you 1,000 words at a time. So in theory, you can copy paste and analyze your story 1,000 words at a time. I figured that I would just pay for it. So this whatever I'm using now, all the features that you see are the paid version. Okay, make sense so far? Any questions? Yeah, I see you guys are like talking and discussing. ChatGPT, I wouldn't rely on ChatGPT right now because it's not that great. Uh, uh, I think AI can be useful as a tool, right? But I think it boils down to the question of, are you here to get stories written or are you here to write stories? Uh, well, okay, I'm not gonna lie. I have used ChatGPT for a few of these. Okay, what I did was ChatGPT. Okay, okay, you know what? Let's digress a bit. All right. Okay, let me show my entire screen. So by the way, I have posted a link to this, but let okay, one of the exercises that I was preparing was basically for you to develop a character. Right? I'm not gonna come up with all these characters myself. So I went to ChatGPT. Hi, ChatGPT, can you give me 15 character descriptions? Or, I'm writing an introductory course. I need short, simple descriptions of characters. And then I said make it furry. Yes. Okay, these are not meant to be like full on like stuff that you can copy paste book like into a book, but this is enough for you guys to look at, and then the exercise for this is to take this character and turn it into a story. Okay. Okay. Any questions so far with regards to the like pro writing aid and Grammarly so far? Okay. Good, good. Yeah. Okay. I do recommend like please use it please use it to correct mistakes. I recommend at least the free version of Grammarly, alright? Um Yeah, so Grammarly is good for the free tier. Maybe in time the paid tier has gotten better also. Maybe I'm not very sure. But since I have already used I'm already using Pro Writing 8, so I'm not gonna pay $80 a year. I think it's more expensive per month. So if you like using Grammarly, I think it's 80 per year at the cheapest. Does Grammarly have an app? I think they do. You might want to check because again, it's been a while since I used it. Um, One thing I like to do is I write it first and then I edit it later, because if I'm writing and then it suggests a correction, I go back and edit and then I go back and forth. It can be very distracting. So I usually write everything first, then analyze it all at once. Okay, we'll take the rest of the questions after the class. Let's move on to the exercises first. All right. So we'll wrap up today's class with your first take-home exercise. Okay. So the challenge is easy. Okay. Write a short story that uses the 3 act structure. Okay. Limit yourself to one scene. Okay. I don't want this to turn into a full-on novel, right? Because you're just like, oh my goodness, Decro asked me for like the first writing class to write like a novel, and then you come back with like 60,000 pages. I don't know. Right. No, okay. Limit yourself to one scene. It's just one, like, you're in a coffee shop, stick with the coffee shop. Okay. If you are if you there are characters in a space station, just stick to that and don't move on. Okay, just that one scene. If you're new to writing, stick to a third person point of view. Okay, because that's generally the one that most people start with. If you are more experienced, go for something unfamiliar. All right. If you want to try second person, go for it. Okay. After that, run it through Grammarly or Pro Writing 8. Okay. Not all the suggestions will be what's best for your story, so make your own judgment. Yeah. Um. Let's see. You're asking the impossible. I took a 3,000 word commission and gave them 9,000 words. That's fine. I'm not limiting your number of words. I am limiting the scene, right? You can plan the scene before. Okay, keep it to one. In fact, so if you guys go to the workshop material, let me paste the link for you guys. You can access the future stuff if you want to see them. I'm still refining them over time, and my goal is to get all the exercises out ahead of time. But don't worry, it will be out eventually. Okay, so I kind of put this here already. The instructions are also here. So basically, what you'll do is you'll summarize your plot. Okay, again, keep it to one scene. You write this out, and then you write your story here. So what you can do is, if you are new to Google Docs, on the top left, you can file, make a copy. Right? If you click make a copy, right, you can have your own version where you can edit, and that's for yours to keep. And so this will be your first exercise. Let's go back to the slides. After you are done with it, right, you make a copy and then you edit it. Okay, you drop it in the homework Dropbox, which you should see in like lesson 1, and then you can put down there like what, like, you know, just click new post and then you just paste the link. I think it should be self-explanatory for that. Maybe there should be a folder for submissions. You should see it. If you don't see it, on the left side of Discord, okay, you should see channels and roles. Under browse channels, you want to turn the homework Dropbox on. If you don't see it there, then yeah, it's probably there. Do you have a recommended word count? I do not. Again, I wanna keep this. So you just write as long as you feel the story should be. I don't want to limit your word count. Just get, if you get a feel of it, just write. Right. I can say like 5,000. Right. Do you know how long it takes for me to write a 5,000 word story? It takes me 10 hours. I write at an average speed about 500 to 600 words an hour. So if I ask for 5,000, I'm asking for like 10 hours out of you. Okay. It's writing is very, like, the general guideline, at least for me, is my writing speed takes 15 times longer than the average reading speed. So if you read something in 10 minutes, right, it takes 150 minutes for me to write. So that's 2.5 hours to read. So let the story flow. I'm not gonna tell you like try to pad it to extend the word count. I'm not gonna say shorten and cut out parts to make it shorter. Just let the story happen, right? The focus of this is, number one, I want you guys to start experimenting with point of views. And number two, like break the inertia, right? Like overcome the inertia so you start writing. Because if I tell if I tell you like the most daunting exercise for the first lesson and you're just like I never want to go to Decorous classes again. It's gonna be easy, alright? Okay. Yeah, so the title, just put your name so it's easier for me to keep track of who said what. Then link your Google Docs. Okay, be sure to change your sharing settings to allow anyone with the link to view, because if not, I will click on it and you'll say no permissions. Then there's the tag feedback welcome or no feedback please, because I understand not everyone wants to get feedback, right? You just want to submit it, don't mark my work, right? Then that's fine. I don't. If you don't want to don't want me to say anything, that's fine. Because in the end, writing can be a very personal thing, right? And if you don't want feedback, that is genuinely okay. But I recommend that you let people feedback and help each other out, right? Okay. When you give feedback, okay, so the feedback is, when you say open for feedback, it's not just for me to comment, because frankly I cannot. I think 40 plus of you guys signed up. I don't think I can read every single assignment every single week, like on top of a full-time job. I will die. But I like following. I think you guys should try with the following format. Like, which part of the story are you referring to? So like, for instance, when this character says something to this character, right, what did I feel? Oh, I felt nervous about what's gonna happen, or I don't like this character because he comes across as grumpy, or this feels very out of character for what he normally does, right? Or I felt like the scene was moving too slowly. It felt like the action scene should have moved faster, right? Or you can say, what's happening next, and then what do you want to see happen next? Okay, hang on. I see. Pause first. And you guys should not be able to edit the message. I saw someone say it's editing. Okay. No. Okay. False alarm. Oh my goodness. You guys are scaring me. Okay. So sorry. Back to the feedback. Okay. Tell the writer what you feel. Right. So generally this is better feedback because let's say I'm writing a story, right? Again, right? I'm writing that book and I made this character very unlikable because throughout the course of the story, he will fall in love with someone who is his polar opposite. So he's very cold-hearted, he's very straightforward, right? And then as he starts to meet the guy who's very warm and caring, he'll be like, oh, maybe like this needs to change. And throughout the story, you will see him develop. But the thing is, if someone tells me straight up, I don't like this character, he's very mean, I don't like him, change it, right? See, I won't change it because you don't get what I'm looking for, right? So when you give feedback, right, you won't know what the author's full vision is for the scene, right? So just say what you feel, right? What you feel, what do you like about it, what you didn't like, what you are looking forward to, so and so, right? After that, right, if you since we are new, okay, so generally we don't do this, I don't know, maybe people don't do this for like very professional writers, right? But since everyone is kind of learning here, we could do something like that, right? We give each other advice, right? So for instance, I feel like when this character talks to the other person, he comes across as very grumpy, right? So if you are looking for him to feel more friendly, maybe you could allow him, like, you know, make him smile a bit or make him crack a joke to ease the tension. See, something like that. So if the writer says, oh, my intention is not for them to be friendly, my intention is for them to actually be, you know, enemies, right? Then sure, you know, they're free to disregard that goal. So example, at the part where Gabriel betrays Donovan, I felt the reveal was very abrupt. If you want to ease the reader into the reveal, you could have the characters chat about their motivation. Maybe they could say this and this and this, and then from there you give advice, right? So this is how we can. I think let's try following this format for feedback. If this is not helpful and you feel like it's very restrictive, we can discuss and see how we tweak this over time. Because again, I'm not super sure about how we want to run this workshop, but let's start with this as a good first step. All right. Okay, any questions? I think this should be the wrap up for the story, for the first lesson. Any questions? Okay, let's see. How critical should feedback be? Like from a technical space, feedback should be brutal. I think if you follow the format, you should be fine. Keep in mind that while correctness is one thing. Like I think one thing I like to ask myself before giving feedback is why am I giving the feedback, right? Am I giving the feedback to feel smart? Because some people do that, right? Some people tell you feedback, right, as a way to feel smart, or they feel threatened and they're like, oh, this guy is his writing is better than me, but I'm sure he also has his mistakes, and I'm gonna burn him down over it. I'm gonna like blah, 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 blah. Right. If those are your motivations, those are probably not why you should be giving feedback. I think at the heart of this is like I want this to be kind of a space where we help each other and we motivate and maybe even inspire each other, right? And to do that, like our motivations for giving feedback needs to be in the right place, right? And so if you see it as like, how can I help this person improve, right? Go for that. In fact, even when people come to me with stories and they ask me to read through and give feedback, I don't give them a barrage of everything that could be improved. Because if I'm expecting a new writer to write as good as me, I will scare them away, right? So if my motivation is to help them get better and help inspire them, I usually only pick like the 2 to 3 most obvious things that they can start to work on. I will focus on like what advice works for their skill level. I will focus on maybe 2 or 3 things that they can work on, right? If I give like 100 things to work on, they will not write a second story. That will be the first and only story they write, and they will never come back to me. Right. So I will focus on just 2 to 3 things to help them like get started, and usually it motivates them to keep improving and write the second and third and so on. 3x story in one scene sounds challenging. Oh no. My intention was for it to be easy enough, because otherwise it'll grow into a very big story. You want to try the fly on the wall perspective. Got a fun little idea. That's great. Like, that's good. The exercise, it should start, develop, and be resolved. Yes. It doesn't have to be a big save the world plot. It could be like 2 characters just talking in a room. Like, why didn't you do the dishes today? For the exercise, is there a word count? Feel free to write it as long as you want. I don't want to enforce the word count, because if I do, right, then people certain, some of you guys might feel limited by it, and other people will be like, I am gonna pad the number of words. So my recommendation, just let it flow. Right? If you feel like there's a vision for something, just do it. Slice of lifestyle is the thing. Yeah, challenge. You don't know how to write short stories, it's gonna turn into a 40,000 word, which is why I'm gonna say limited to one scene. Yes. Yeah. With that, let's wrap up the first class. Those who need to go can go. I will continue to answer questions, and for like the next, we'll see until like people start asking questions, I guess. Sorry. Again, I apologize. We have taken a bit more time than expected. I am now less nervous about the lessons where I think there's too little content, because I'm just like, will this be enough for one lesson? And I'm just like, okay, yeah, this will be more than enough for one lesson. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed like the first one. Please act story for one scene. Yes. 10 years later, Decker is still answering question. I will need food and toilet break. Thank you. Excited to learn more. That's great. Okay, you see, like, that's another concern. I'm just like, will point of view and 3x structure be enough? Because I can tell that some people will be like, this is basic, so I would not want, like, I have learned nothing new. One continuous scene, correct. Yes. Expect a full novel on your desk. Oh no. I cry. Thanks for hosting. Hey, no worries. Yeah, class is over. Yes, class is over. If you need to head off, please do. Are there teams you should avoid writing about? If you feel like certain teams would be triggering, do add a trigger warning. But the general rule for this class is no, not safe for work. Keep it safe for work. Yeah, I want to keep this content accessible. So if I'm gonna talk about this in any of your stories in like future classes, right? I do want to make sure that this lessons, because I will be uploading these to YouTube as well. I want these videos and stuff to be accessible to people of all ages. Is there an example I can read? I don't have an example. I wanted to, but like the amount of time I have spent preparing this is a bit long. So I'm just like, okay, I think the lessons are self-explanatory enough to not require an example. Yeah. Okay, but like let's say you are struggling to come up with a lesson that fits into one scene, right? It could be like 2 siblings need to walk the dog, right? The inciting incident is when one of them demands, like the brother demands that the sister walk the dog because I walked the dog the past 3 times. And then they start to bring up each other, but I cleaned the dishes the other time and you didn't. You didn't do anything. And it's like, yeah, but I lent you money for like the time you needed to, you know, to buy like something to impress your crush. So you're not one to talk. And it's like, oh, and they start fighting, and then their mom comes in and scolds them both. And then now the end, like that's the climax, right? And then now the ending is both of them are together, they're outside and they're walking the dog and nobody is happy. Yeah. Okay, you have an example that you're gonna work with, which is a story you wrote previously. Astronaut who's waking up from stasis and getting an inventory of the ship while the crew wakes up. Yeah, that sounds interesting, right? So you can start to think about how that's gonna resolve, right? Yeah. Malfunction on the AI, HAL 9000 scenario. You're gonna start on the homework. Yeah, enjoy. If it's like a fist fight, like sure, I think you can go for it. If you are worried and you feel it's a bit too graphic, like have a trigger warning there, so like people who do not want to read that kind of thing can at least they're aware of what they're getting themselves into. Figuring out an actual conflict will be hard. You got told your premise was more of a scene. You'll be surprised. I mean, there are slice of life animes, right? Where literal, like, if you were to look at it from like a plot perspective, it's like someone forgets a homework, and then like, oh no, the teacher is gonna scold me, and then everyone tries to work together to help her make a project to submit instead, so like she wouldn't get scolded. Like that's it. And she submits it, and everyone's happy. I don't know, right? That like to most people, that's boring, right? Because like, oh no, but we watch action movies, like you need to save the world, right? You don't need to save the world in every single story, right? I think sometimes even slice of life accomplishes tension, right? It accomplishes like the three act structure, right? Without needing anyone to be saving the world. And I think that's okay, right? You think you have an idea of a guy showing someone his teleportation activity abilities. Yeah, that sounds interesting. Three people discussing travel plans in a VR game adventure. Ooh. Safe forward only means PG 13 maximum. I guess, yeah. I would avoid sexual activity altogether. Again, I want to upload these videos to YouTube, and I want these lessons to be something that people of all ages can come and refer to in future. I mean, it's a bit like presumptuous of me because like who's to say anyone wants to watch in the first place? But I am gonna try and keep it accessible. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I'm glad that you guys are coming up with ideas of it. Depression. Then I think you can. I think depression is gonna be an interesting topic. It can be a helpful outlet to express a lot of emotion. In fact, I think this is like a technique used in therapy as well. But if you feel like it would be triggering, please put a trigger warning so that people looking to give feedback, right, they don't end up like you know getting triggered, right? What about bad endings? If you can fit it into the 3x structure, like sure. Almost thought something with the origin story. Okay, like we don't wanna go too much. There will be so if some of like the future classes I will be talking about how we can introduce a scene, how we can introduce characters, how we can build tension. And so I think those will all be very interesting. I think the way that we could go into each of them, like yeah, like you'll slowly learn more techniques. So I won't focus too much on these, like you know, oh yeah, try to introduce a scene first, right? I want to teach you guys how to introduce the scene before I make you start introducing the scene. But for now, like, we are focusing on the outline, and I want to see if you guys can get a feel of the 3 act structure, and as well as like getting a feel of point of view, which is why, like, if you're familiar with third person, I recommend trying something new, right? Yeah, okay. I think that's all for the questions for now. If you guys have more questions, feel free to ask over on Discord as well. If you, especially if like people, like you don't have to DM me because sometimes that gets lost. Sometimes asking in like the general chat also means that other people, like people other than me, can reply, and if I have something to add on, I'll add on. Yeah, because sometimes I miss messages and they're just like, oh, I was waiting for Decro to tell me. Right. Sometimes people can answer as well, right? Because otherwise I might get overwhelmed with everything I need to do. Yeah, so I think it'll be cool. Plus if if we ask in the public space, then again, if I reply, everyone else can see the answer as well, not just you. So I think that's more helpful as well. Yeah. Okay, thanks so much for coming. I'm glad you guys are having ideas for the assignment, because one of my worries was like people look at it, they're like, you know what, this is not worth the time, and they're like, I'm not gonna do any writing whatsoever. So I'm glad you guys like are getting something out of this, and even though like the content I treat this as basic, you guys are engaging. So yeah, thanks so much for paying attention. Yeah, I really appreciate you guys coming because I have no qualification to do this. Yeah, but enjoy your assignment, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye bye.